Hello, and welcome back to Me Screaming into the Void. As you might have noticed by the title, or not, I have watched 28 Years Later Bone Temple, and I have things to say. Good things, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing a deep dive. I am very unhappy about two things. One, that they decided to show this movie in theaters in January, which is known for the month where the worst movies are being shown in theaters. I'm already mad about that because people by now know that if they go in January to watch movies, they are expecting movies that shouldn't be performing well. Two, it's underperforming in theaters. And I don't understand why. Some theaters have already stopped showing the movie and it's only in its second week. I'm mad because this movie was awesome and everybody should go and watch it in the theaters because there are certain scenes that will just, yes, they will also work at home. Yes, you can also watch it on the TV, but if you can support your local theater and you have the means to go to the movies, I would highly suggest you do because this movie was an absolute delicacy to watch. I was very surprised because I didn't know what to expect from Nia DaCosta. I do know that she got the full support from Danny Boyle. I have gone through all the interviews and there is nothing that brings me more joy than a cast that has come together and has so much positivity about a movie. Let's get into it. There will be all the spoilers, as usual in my deep dives. I will keep nothing hidden.
Yes! That's awesome!
So if you haven't watched the movie and you don't want to get spoiled, please leave, float off into the void, and come back once you've watched it. And if you're one of those strange and mysterious people who love getting all the spoilers and then go and watch the movie so that they can enjoy it better, I guess, then you can stay. Otherwise, I don't know what you're doing here. This is a movie about tracksuit wearing cults, a doctor who dances with alphas to Duran Duran, and the terrible realization that in 28 years later, the Bone Temple, the monsters aren't the ones with the virus, they're the ones who survived it. This is directed by Nia DaCosta and written once again by Alex Garland. The film stars Jack O'Connell, Ralph Fiennes, Chi Lewis Parry, Alfie Williams, and Erin Kellyman, with a low-key return from the great and fantastic Cillian Murphy as Jim. Visually, this is completely a different vibe. DaCosta drops Danny Boyle's iPhone Rampage for the Arri Alexa 35, and the effect is immediate. It is way calmer in its narrative, and I think that is very important for a story that is about cruelty, memory, and belief. I was very happy that DaCosta went a completely different way. Even though I have to say 28 years later from Danny Boyle was fantastic. I loved every part of it. If you don't know how much I loved it, you can go and watch it and then come back to this one. In this movie, we pick up exactly where we left off. Spike didn't go back to Holy Island. He broke the rule. If you leave and don't come back, nobody comes for you. The movie opens with a faint screaming in the background carried over the darkness, which we'll get back to. The mainland wastes no time to punish Spike's choice of not going back to his community. He is rescued by a gang of blonde tracksuit-wearing parkour freaks led by Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal in his pristine violet velour tracksuit, perfectly maintained. Jack O'Connell plays Jimmy as a walking collage of corrupted British pop culture. Blonde bob, velvet tracksuits, gold jewelry, and a little girl's tiara. He is charming, funny, and deeply unwell. He radiates this twisted gaiety because he desperately wants to be loved and worshipped. He uses nice words for horrific acts mirroring how real-world cults and authoritarian regimes operate. We find ourselves at an abandoned swimming pool. Jimmy tells Spike the rules. Kill one of the fingers and become one of them or die. Jack O'Connell is just fantastic in this one. The scene where he's conversing with Satan or Old Nick, or also Father, and says, "Are you watching, Father? Master, good." He has this thing about him. It was fantastic, even with the lighting. The camera pans to his face. He looks up. He looks almost enlightened, and he does this thing with his fingers that is almost Christ-like, but obviously not. The fingers are circling Spike and shove him towards Jimmy Shite. At some point, the camera drifts to the wall sign that reads, "No children beyond this point." This isn't just a mundane shot. It's a juxtaposition of Spike, a child, having to murder to survive. And of course, it happens at a leisure center, the kind of place kids used to have. Now it's a ruin where a child has to kill to belong. He doesn't even really win. By sheer dumb luck, he stabs Jimmy in the leg artery. Scheid yanks the knife out wrong and he bleeds out. Spike sits there while Jimmy Crystal smiles as his shadow physically overshadows Scheid's body. He's Jimmy now. Everyone is Jimmy. Jimmy Ink, Jemima, Jimmy Fox, Jimmy Snake, Jimmy Snow, Jimmy Snow. Imagine Jon Snow part of them. Sorry. You also notice that all of them are of a very young age, or most probably have been recruited by Jimmy from a very young age so that he was able to mold their minds. Spike becomes one of his fingers, however, looks like he's going to throw up because there is no escaping his new situation. Jimmy Crystal is a villain through and through, but he is also a traumatized kid frozen in the 2000s. He watched his mom and sister getting ripped apart. He ran to his dad, a priest who welcomed the apocalypse as the rapture. In Jimmy's head, his father became Old Nick, aka Satan, the leader of the infected. His cult is just a warped attempt to turn his trauma into something meaningful. The violet color of his tracksuit was O'Connor's idea, since at one point it was a royal color, difficult to make, once again cementing his character's belief that he is an almost godlike figure. The Jimmys find a farm where Tom, his pregnant partner Kathy, and others live. Kathy escapes, but the rest are dragged into the barn. Jimmy Crystal says it's time for charity. I have never heard this word being used in such a vile way as when Jimmy says it. I think he also says these things to make it in his mind be something meaningful. And he says, how about we do the removal of the shirt? At first, I wasn't very sure what to expect from a removal of the shirt. I thought it might get a little quick and dirty, but it wasn't. When I noticed that most of the fingers were pretty queasy by hearing that sentence, and since they have zero issues killing zombies in the most fun and atrocious ways, that already sets off the alarm bells for me. They start flaying people alive. Skin comes off, people scream while still alive, and it goes on as day turns into night. And I realized that these very same screams are the same ones we heard in the beginning of the movie. At least that's my theory. If you have another one, let me know. But I am pretty sure that those screams in the beginning of the movie, where everything was still dark, warn you beforehand what is to come. I thought the first part with Danny Boyle was pretty intense, but it wasn't that atrocious as yet. You saw a glimmer of it when you saw one of the infected hanging upside down with Jimmy carved on it, so I was aware of the fact that Jimmy can be cruel, but this took it to a completely new level. Spike runs outside and throws up, and Jimmy Ink returns from scouting. She's rattled because she saw a man with orange skin, wink wink, Kelson painted in iodine, dancing with an alpha in a palace of bones. We'll get to that. I thought we would first go through Jimmy Crystal's path and then we'll come back to Dr. Kelson because they are two very separate stories that then melt into one. Jimmy Ink returns, has seen Kelson dancing with an alpha. Yes, that, oh my God. Kelson's storyline is just poetic and beautiful and amazing, and I absolutely adore the juxtaposition between this unhinged and unwell cruelty coming from somebody who clearly has mental health issues, and then you have this other side of Kelson that is beautiful and gives you hope. So Jimmy Ink returns, seeing Spike on his knees begging not to be sent back inside, causes something in her to shift. I feel like her alliance at that point begins to really crack. With two people half-skinned, Jimmy gives Tom a choice. Fight one of the Jimmys and live, or receive charity. And by live, he means come over to the dark side and join the figures. Tom picks Jemima, thinking she's weaker, and oh boy, is he wrong. Obviously. Haven't we learned anything that the smallest isn't going to be the weakest? Though I feel like she is pretending on purpose to make herself small. I don't know what Jemima is up to. She might have already tipped over and gone completely crazy, and so she makes herself really small. In the beginning, I thought she made herself small because she couldn't take the flaying anymore. I couldn't take the flaying anymore. And you see these people just hanging there and trembling. God, it was... Obviously, she takes him completely apart and suggests the next act of charity, the removal of the pants. At that point, Kathy, who's been in the background of the barn on top of a thing, I don't know what you call them, I'm not a farmer, but she drops a hook from the rafters and kills Jemima. Chaos ensues. Tom sets a Jimmy on fire, the barn burns down, the captives burn with it, and Tom is killed. Kathy runs, Jimmy sends Spike after her, and instead Spike begs for his life and for her to take him with her. She punches him in the guts and escapes, which I completely understand. After all that she had to see, and seeing most probably Tom, the love of her life and the father of her baby, getting killed, I would be punching a kid in the stomach too, because you don't know what he's like. What gives us hope, on the other hand, is that Spike isn't one of them. Not yet. They go back to the little camp they set up, and Ink saves Spike from Jimmy's wrath by suggesting that they leave it to Kelson, who she believes is Satan, and he should decide his fate. Jimmy is intrigued because he's like, okay, dancing with the alpha orange dude, this must be his father. They sleep on it and planned to go to Kelson / Old Nick / Satan the next day. While all of this madness unfolds, we have a completely different story unfolding on the other side. We have Dr. Ian Kelson, played by the wonderful Ralph Fiennes, in one of his most glorious roles ever. This was freaking fantastic, and he deserves so much love for how amazing he was in this movie. Loved every second of it. He lives in the Bone Temple, which is a towering ossuary made out of thousands of skulls and bones, each cleaned and stacked. It's a beautiful temple of memento mori. Remember, you must die. He isn't a madman, as many think. It's not a temple to a god, but a temple to the evidence of human existence. Kelson dissolves flesh from bones as a ritual. In a particular shot, we see the pelvic bone. I think it's from the infected woman who gave birth to the uninfected baby. And we see a moth that symbolizes transformation on that pelvic bone. Both symbols that are alluding to something that will come later. Birth, the pelvic bone, moth, transformation. We will get back to that because it has something to do with Samson himself. Kelson anchors himself with music. He has a couple of LPs that he keeps playing when he's inside of his bunker, and when he's outside you hear him sing. Without it, he would have disappeared years ago. He uses music to keep himself sane. He sings Girls on Film while he works, which is... I know that some people will find it weird because he's cleaning dead bodies and taking their bones and making a temple out of it. There is this very poetic beauty to it that I just simply cannot stress enough on. And at that point, while he was working, he then sees Samson, who is running towards him. But he is purposefully stopping, like he wants something from Kelson. And you realize that he wants to be sedated. So Kelson sedates Samson, talks to him, and they pretty much get high on opiates together. He has this very deep and meaningful conversations with Samson, and it is a beautiful friendship. Yes, a friendship that happens with an alpha that rips heads whole with the freaking... I'm sorry, I'm laughing because it's so beautiful. This is amazing. There's so much depth in this, and you got to give it to Garland for putting together such a wonderful story. And I'm so happy. It is a horror movie, but there is so much beauty in it. And why are you not going to the cinema to watch this movie? I command you go to the cinema and watch this movie if it's still playing and you can afford it. If not, wait for it to come out on digital. But show some love to this movie. And then there is this one scene where they dance to Rio in the sunlight. It's this strange and heartbreaking world of two beings in a lonely world trying to feel something. I'm in love with this movie. I adore Nia DaCosta for creating this wondrous story. Whilst they are getting high for the second, third, or fourth time, Kelson tells Samson, if you could just utter one word, it would mean so much to me. Because he recognizes that behind this rage virus, there is still a human being with thoughts. We also see in Samson's mind that when he sees humans, he sees them as one of the infected who are trying to attack him. So he needs to kill them. Kelson says, listen, my opiates are running low. I have raided everything in a radius of, I think, 100 miles. I don't have any more left. So it would be nice if you could utter a word so that I know that there is something going on behind all of that rage. Or I could give you a solution out, meaning he would kill Samson to release him because he knows he's suffering. I think he also is aware of the fact that Samson is aware that he's suffering and he's just some mindless zombie. Oh, chef's kiss. Chef's freaking kiss. This is where we get the scene where Samson, in this opiatic trance, is looking up at the starry sky, specifically at the moon. He utters one word: moon. Now, sitting there in the cinema, watching this beautiful scene unfold, having Samson utter the word moon, that completely changes the entire story, doesn't it? Kelson realizes that the rage virus isn't just a complete loss of humanity. It seems to be added to the physical transformation, a psychosis. A psychosis can be treated. Kelson doesn't believe in demons because he's an atheist, but he does believe in curing people. Once Kelson realizes that there is a way to save Samson, he goes down into his little cave and concocts this cocktail of drugs while in the background, Radiohead's Everything in Its Right Place starts playing. Insane how beautifully placed this song was, and I was gone. I was gone. This whole scene was playing in front of my eyes like a spell. He gives this concoction to Samson. Samson disappears, and we later meet him wandering towards the abandoned train that we saw in the first part. His mind goes back into the last place that he still was human as a boy, meaning he got turned as a child. And inside this train, he remembers being this child with his parents sitting in the train and reading an astronomy book about the moon. So that was the last thing he read before he became one of the infected. And we know that he got infected that day because in the background, while the ticketing supervisor, or whatever you call them, the woman who needs to check your ticket, comes and asks, do you have a ticket? We see in the background one of the infected running. We cut back to Samson, who then utters the words, I don't have a ticket.
Wait, what?
We first see him as an adult uninfected, meaning that he himself is healing. And then we see the entire train full of infected in the present who are attacking him because most probably they can smell or feel that he's no longer one of them. He fights his way out. We cut back to a scene outside of the train and he emerges naked and bloody, reborn as a man who got his mind back. Now, naked and bloody. I'm saying that because when we see these scenes where he gets high with Kelson, at some point he starts wearing clothes as if he's gaining slowly his humanity back. When he emerges from the train, he emerges naked and bloody because being born again, coming out of a bloody hole. And that is how the whole pelvic thing and morph and transformation, you see why I like this movie so much? Because it's like this little packet of beautiful, meaningful, human, just made me very happy. Now the paths converge. Jimmy, Crystal, arrives at the Bone Temple and tells the other Jimmies to wait for him because obviously Jimmy isn't exactly dumb. He is a psycho and has very disturbing mental health issues. However, he's not dumb. So he goes there and you see that the scene is absolutely fantastic because it's like this sit down of beliefs between an atheist and a Satanist. As Jimmy enters the Bone Temple, we see that he's scared of what awaits him. He even lingers a bit and looks around, and he seems nervous at first when he sees Kelson. And he says, "My name is Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal, but you can call me Jimmy," as if still not sure that it is Old Nick in front of him. Jimmy asks if he's Old Nick, and Kelson says, "Satan? No, he's but a man." They get to talking, with Kelson genuinely intrigued by this man in front of him and asks him about his past, and Jimmy opens up. I feel like he opens up for the very first time and confesses to hearing the voice of his father speaking to him. And at this point, Kelson realizes that Jimmy is a very unwell individual. Jimmy needs Kelson to play the part of Satan because he needs the Jimmies to fall in line. I think he realizes that the feather that was joining them together is getting a bit loose and he needs them to be put back in line. So he needs Kelson to be Satan and tells him, "Play him or I will feed you your intestines." Kelson agrees, then Jimmy goes back to the fingers and Kelson talks to Samson, kind of realizing that he is scared for the very first time in his life. A man who has survived decades boils bones and makes an ossuary and is an atheist is scared for his life for the first time because he realizes that the man in front of him has done a lot of evil. The Jimmies arrive at dusk and we get one of the most insane scenes of the movie. Like, we have suffered with Spike through all those atrocities. We have seen Samson become a new man, and this for me is almost like a little cookie that we're given as a thank you for having suffered through it all. Because we arrive at dusk, everything gets dark, everything is lighted by candles. Kelson really changed the atmosphere by making it this mysterious place. Kelson's eyes are blackened, Iron Maiden's The Number of the Beast plays in the background, and Kelson puts on a devil's show, dosing the cult with hallucinogens. This performance freaking blew me away. It was as if Ralph Fiennes was born to do this. And he was so into it. He dons this coat and this hood that he usually uses when he's firing up the pit to burn, the flesh from the bones. He has this thing he made full of coal that when he shakes it, it makes the fire go brighter. Oh my gosh. It is excellent. The Jimmies are high on whatever he threw in their faces, and so is Jimmy himself. And as the excitement finally dies down, not really, he tells the fingers what Jimmy told him. Stay in line, do as you're told, and do terrible atrocities. The Jimmies will grow in numbers. There will be hundreds, nay thousands of them. Since he himself is Old Nick, he says what they have to do because he fears for his life and doesn't want to die. However, the Jimmies are behind masks and he sees Spike behind the mask. He says, there is one more thing that you need to do. And Jimmy Crystal says, "No, we're good. You said all the things I told you to." And it's like, me as Old Nick will tell you one more thing. Because he wants to save the boy from becoming Jimmy, Kelson turns to the Jimmies and turns Crystal's faith against him, declaring that as Old Nick, he demands Jimmy's sacrifice just as God demanded Jesus's. You see where this is going? And he turns to Spike and says, "I have seen you behind the mask. You've suffered enough. Not, I have recognized you behind your mask, I know what you look like, is I see you. You've gone through enough. This is where chaos completely ensues. Jimmy stabs Kelson to shut him up. Ink kills the remaining fingers. Spike stabs Jimmy. And when Ink goes to Kelson, because you see also in her, I hope we get a little bit more of her character, because she was freaking fantastic to watch. Her whole character arc was so interesting to witness, because I think she's been with Jimmy long enough not to care. Even when she kills the zombies, she almost looks bored. She's tired, and I get it. She also tells Spike, I don't think Jimmy is who he tells us that he is. So there is this recognition in her. However, since most probably she was recruited since a small child by Jimmy, she believes in Satan and she believes in Old Nick. And when she sees Kelson, her belief in Old Nick is very strong, and she believes Kelson to be Satan. While Kelson is dying, she goes to him and asks Kelson if he really is Old Nick. And he replies, and this is important, no, nothing is, no one is. It's just us. This is where her entire world crumbles. However, I think there is still hope for her, because she realizes she was believing the wrong person for the wrong things. And I hope this is going to be picked up in the third part. Yes, there's going to be a third part. It's going to be directed by Danny Boyle again. This makes me very happy. This sentence is also reflective of what Alex Garland's beliefs are. That is just us. It also reflects on what atrocities are currently also being done in the name of religion. Be it Satanism, be it not Satanism, it doesn't matter what kind of religion. But fact is, atrocities are being done by madmen at the moment. And this movie perfectly reflects that these madmen doing these atrocities are freaking unwell. That's why this movie is so important right now, because I personally feel that if we sorry, I'm getting excited. It perfectly reflects what's happening in a zombie apocalyptic way. So before Kelson dies, Spike nails a living Jimmy Crystal to an inverted cross that Kelson had put up for the show. And Spike and Ink leave both men behind as a now lucid, still ragey Samson arrives to say thank you to Kelson before he then completely dies. This is so good. Now, this is insane. And I love how the roles have been reversed, because Jimmy, who's now inverted on the cross, sees Samson as Satan and cries out, Father, why have you forsaken me? Because he can't hear the voices anymore. Now we get to the epilogue of the movie. The movie gets really quiet. We are at a cottage, tea is being served, and we have a history lesson being taught about the Third Reich and how if we don't remember, history will repeat itself. Jim, played by Cillian Murphy, is a father now, and he's giving history lessons to his daughter while serving her tea and toast. His daughter hears a commotion outside and they head out when we see Spike and Kelly, formerly Jimmy Ink, run from the infected. Jim's daughter, Sam, asks if they should help, and Jim says, of course. I love that Jim started as a man running from the end of the world and is ending this movie with him being a father welcoming the survivors of a new one. The original 28 Days Later theme swells over the credits, and for me, that was like a beautiful full circle moment that Nia DaCosta just winked at 28 Days Later. We can't talk about Bone Temple without talking about the sound of it. In a world 28 years removed from civilization, music isn't just background noise. It's a remembrance of the time that was lost. But also, it feels almost ritualistic, as if playing these songs keeps Kelson sane. Kelson's use of music is particularly beautiful because we see him in his daily chores singing Duran Duran's Girls on Film. On the surface, it's jarring, but if you look deeper, it's a tether to reality to keep his mind from snapping under the weight of these thousands of skulls he handles. This reaches a fevered pitch during the dance. Seeing a monster like Samson, responding to the melody of Rio is pure magic. It's the film's way of showing us that beauty still has a frequency, even for the infected. Then the focus shifts to the cure that he's concocting, while the music also shifts with Radiohead's Everything in its Right Place. It also shows that music can be weaponized. During The Devil's Show, he blares Iron Maiden, The Number of the Beast. Here, art is almost corrupted. He isn't using it to heal, he's using it to play the role of evil that the cult expects. And then there is the ending. As the original theme swells over the final shot of Jim, it's more than just nostalgia, it's a full circle moment. Kelson's words to Spike are very important. It's just us. In 2002, the rage virus was a shock to the system. 28 years later, the Bone Temple shows us that the real apocalypse wasn't the infection. It was everything that followed. It was the way we filled that void with gods, monsters, and fingers because we are terrified to just be. Jimmy Crystal died a slave to a lie, crying out to a father who wasn't there. Spike walks away. He leaves the inverted cross and the ossuary behind, hopefully towards a less violent future where he can be a boy and become a man with Jim as, I guess, a father figure. In the end, this movie tells us that the monsters aren't inevitable. Cruelty is a choice. Samson found his mind, Jim found his peace, and Spike finally hopefully found a home. This was never a zombie movie to begin with. Jimmy became a god because no one stopped him from becoming a monster. Samson became human because somebody finally saw him. Spike now has a chance to grow up safely. The final question isn't, can we survive? But after all these horrendous acts we have witnessed, can we still be human? Since, as Kelson puts it so eloquently, it's just us. This was my deep dive on 28 years later, The Bone Temple. I want you to go and watch it in the cinemas or when it comes out on digital, because I don't know if it's still going to be playing in cinemas. I was utterly blown away by this movie. I hope I could infect some of you to go and watch it. This was me screaming into the void. Thank you so much for being here and floating out there with me through this deep dive. Don't forget to sacrifice the subscribe button to summon my screams, and I will see you next time. Bye!